Thank you to Wireless Mike for the suggestion. This is Beau of the Fifth Column, a fantastic political communicator, discussing. What is he discussing? Actually, I don't have the sheet up. What is he discussing? Ooh, on advisors going to Israel. Woof. Well, he is a great source of wisdom when it comes to international politics. So let's check it out.
Howdy there, Internet people. It's Beau again. So today we are going to talk about some news, and we're going to talk about a question that was prompted by that news, and it has come in at least a dozen times since the news broke. And we're just going to kind of go over what's occurring, and then we'll shed a little bit of light on the question. Okay, so if you missed it, if you don't know what's occurring, the United States has sent advisors to Israel. And by advisors, this time it's actually advisors, not advisors, wink, wink. We'll go over what the officials are saying first. And let's see. We have asked several officials with relevant experience simply to help Israeli officials think through the difficult questions ahead and explore their options. The IDF will, as always, make its own decisions. That was the Pentagon. This is state. We give them our best advice. It's important, as we said, not only what they do, but how they do it, particularly when it comes to making sure that civilians are as protected as they possibly can be in this crossfire. Okay, so remember back to the video with the question from France. This is how they're getting that influence. They're sending advisors. They're not expanding that coalition. This is how they're doing it. One of the people that has drawn a lot of attention because he's one of the advisors is a person named Lieutenant General James Glenn, United States Marines, Special Operations, just like we talked about in the video. Okay, so here is the question, and this came in a bunch, and they all pretty much had this tone. How can you think they're trying to avoid full war when they're sending the Lieutenant General over Fallujah to advise? And there's a whole bunch here about him. I'm going to summarize it as a monster. Please explain to me how they're sending him in the interest of peace. Okay, so for those who don't know,
Just 1 minute. Beau's expertise is so much larger than my own that I want to be able to brag if we say the same thing. I heard a comment on Leftist Mafia the other night that I disagreed with, and I couldn't figure out how to articulate it properly. So I don't know if I actually responded in the comments, but here it is. Somebody said that Biden compared what happened in Israel to 9/11, and they were just aghast. He dared compare this attack, October 7th, to 9/11. It's a good comparison. It was a great comparison, in my humble opinion, and it was a correct comparison. And I think they couldn't have missed what Biden was saying more, and they were advising you poorly. That's a little harsh, I know, but it's my earnest opinion. And I also think they meant well, and I think their larger perspective on Israel and Gaza is correct. I think we need to actively be working to stop a genocide from occurring right now. Part of that work, though, means not overreacting. It means taking advantage of the fact that we are not currently getting bombed and being dispassionate because we have the luxury of being dispassionate. Dispassionate usually means, if as long as you're staying moral, it usually means you're acting wisely. It is nearly an identical situation in Israel right now to 9/11. I'll just give you the broad strokes. An attack by, a terrorist attack. There's no way to put it other than that. It was, I suppose, a more organized terrorist attack in terms of like officially recognized institutions. But it was an attack on the civilian population by far-right extremists, aka terrorists. There is a far-right government in charge of Israel right now. That far-right government is using the terrorist attack as an excuse to do an extraordinarily, let me try that again, as an excuse to do an extraordinary amount of violence on people that have nothing to do with the attack. The civilians who are getting bombed and shot right now, they didn't say, hey, Hamas, go attack the Israelis. It's the same thing. It is the same thing. Biden right now is sending this general, who was part of that mess, to advise the Israelis. What I hope the general is there to do is what Biden did, and I agree with him doing, in his speech where he compared Israel now to the United States in 2003, a comparison I also made. And which is to say, don't make the same mistake we did. What mistake did we make? We allowed right-wing nut jobs in our own country to respond to right-wing nut jobs in another country by attacking an unrelated population. And we, including my idiot self, 14 though I was at the time, blindly supported it. The whole United States, with the exception of basically Sam Cedar and Janine Garofalo, blindly supported it. And anybody that was against it was called a traitor. Anybody that was against just attacking an unrelated country was called a traitor. It's exactly what's happening right now. I have to say, I'm not thrilled with Biden's response overall. And I will nitpick that at your request. Sure, I'll tell you what I dislike about Biden's response. Happy to. But I assume you know that about at least your old pal here. And what I think Bo is going to say is just that. The general, monster though he may be, is advising somebody else on how not to become a monster. It will help you to imagine the Netanyahu government as a bunch of MAGA types, because that's what they are. Within our own government, just 3.5 years ago, we had a bunch of MAGA types. What stopped us from just turning into a dictatorship? Level-headed career military folks. I hope that is who Biden is reaching out to. And by the way, I also hope that the people of Israel decide we need to do whatever our country's version of impeaching is with Netanyahu. That would be a great way for this situation to resolve itself peacefully.
We get into this. Fallujah was horrible. It was a battle, 2 battles, really. And it was bad in any way that fighting can be bad. From the fighting itself to the amount of civilian loss, it was horrific. Okay. And I honestly can't think of something comparable to say it was like this. It was that bad. So, to the question, please explain to me how they're sending the lieutenant general over Fallujah in the interest of peace. I don't know how they would be doing that, because the first thing they would have to do is bring him out of retirement. He retired in 2010. He was Lieutenant General Stadler. Lieutenant General Glenn was not a lieutenant general almost 20 years ago. That happened in 2004. I don't know what he was in 04. I know in 07-ish, he was a lieutenant colonel. So my guess is he was a major. But
I'm glad I said what I said. But let's acknowledge I wasn't even in the ballpark. I wasn't even playing the right sport. Okay.
But it doesn't matter. Captain, major, lieutenant colonel, what this means is that everything you've heard about that fighting, everything that you've seen in still images, he saw with his own eyes. Then he went on to a field that specializes in a low footprint. I would imagine, after seeing that and having 20 years to process it, and entering a field where the idea is to not do that, yeah, he probably has some thoughts. He might be the perfect person to go over there, because he'll be able to say, I was a part of something like you're planning, only smaller, and this is how bad it was. Because it's worth remembering that Fallujah, I want to say it has a population of 250,000, more or less, somewhere in there. So a tenth, roughly.
Redemption. Right? That's basically what I was saying. Just a different person. But okay. All right. I'm gonna choose to take a redemptive partial credit for that.
There is no advice that can be provided that is going to say a large-scale ground offensive into that area is going to be okay. It doesn't exist. If they do it, it's going to be bad. A full-scale offensive will be bad. And however it is read by Tehran, however they perceive it, that is what determines whether or not this expands into a wider conflict. I would imagine the fact that this is a person who has experience not just with massive urban combat operations, but also the alternative, the low footprint stuff. I don't think that's a coincidence. Now, what occurs is up to the Israelis. It's up to the Israeli government. The advisors are hopefully explaining that a large-scale ground offensive is a bad idea. There isn't any advice that they can provide that will make it not a bad idea. It just doesn't exist. So hopefully they're explaining that, and hopefully they're persuasive, and the Israeli government is open to hearing the other side of it. I don't know that they will be. But that's what's going on. So what Biden and the French president were kind of angling towards, it looks like it's happening. But there's no way to know how effective it's going to be. And there's a lot riding on the ability of these advisors to state their advice very clearly and persuasively. So the short version, as far as all of the questions, they're not sending the general that was over Fallujah. They're sending somebody who was in Fallujah and then later became a lieutenant general. It's not the same guy. But I would hope that his experiences there are something that would help him provide the kind of information that would make them realize that maybe this isn't what they want to do. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
Great video. Bo of the fifth column, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I agree, of course. Hopefully they can dissuade. The real, in understanding the situation, I would say there are two groups to consider. There is the Netanyahu administration and the Israeli people. The Israeli people are going to be like the American people, largely ignorant, largely not paying attention to the details, largely getting their news through their preferred propaganda. You're going to have to, for example, not just say you shouldn't massacre civilians, even though that should be all you have to say. Really, that should be all that's necessary. But if your interest is in saving these people, then you got to be better than that. And you're going to have to offer, I say you, but I mean our selected representatives, because this is what they're paid to do in part. They're going to have to offer a different route to securing the safety of the Israeli people. No matter how you feel about the context in which the attack happened, they need to understand that they are safe, first and foremost. Or rather, that the people who are doing the attacking, or did the attack, will see justice. There's lots of nonviolent ways you can go about doing that. But you have to make that, if you want your pitch listened to, part of your pitch needs to be what the American who's over there advising, what you suggest they do to go get the people that did this. Incidentally, Israel has maybe the best intelligence service on planet Earth currently. They can find these people, if anybody can. You could even pitch to Israeli nationalism and praise their intelligence service and say, trust in your intelligence service. This is how we got bin Laden, is we eventually relied on our intelligence service. We calmed down enough. We got enough of our rage sated with the blood of civilians that we could take 5 minutes to listen to them. We found bin Laden, and we killed him. Do the same with Hamas. Their leaders. Attacking the people in Gaza is no way to proceed. Then there's the other person, and this is the difficulty. There's Netanyahu and his administration. When I compare him to Trump, it's not lightly. Think about how foreign leaders dealt with Trump. Do you remember Zelensky talking about Trump? Do you remember the things he said about Trump? Oh, he sang Trump's praises. That is because Trump is a fascist. The things he does are rarely for the reasons he says he's doing them for. Most right-wingers are just looking for an excuse for war. Netanyahu is just looking for an excuse for genocide. And now he's got it. Mars Falcon, I believe, pointed out. Let me jump back up. Up. Yeah. Mars Falcon. Biden administration has been trying to restrain Israeli retaliation the entire time. Public statements standing with Israel keep the negotiations going. I hope they're able to bring this to a quick end. Yeah, exactly. Now, let me finish that thought, and I'll go to a criticism of Biden, because I don't want you guys to think I'm trying to Dave Rubin you here. Yes, Netanyahu is a demagogue. I think, honestly, he's a madman. And the way Biden is dealing with him strikes me as, if you had a drunk, already unstable person waving a loaded safety off gun around, like, hey, you're doing great, champ. Here's the thing. Maybe just point it. Maybe just point it that way for a second, and let's talk. Now, that said, here's my genuine criticism. I don't, as Christy Z pointed out, he's gone against the UN. Why? Maybe Mars Falcon is correct, and it's tied into some negotiation that blah, 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 blah. But man, if the UN gives you the gift of making a leftist argument for you, president of the left-leaning, theoretically, party of the United States, take the gift. What are you doing? What are you doing? You think you're going to schmooze Netanyahu into not being a homicidal maniac? He's a homicidal maniac. He will never not be a homicidal maniac. He will never like you, Joe Biden, so much that he decides not to do this genocide that gives him half a chub every time he thinks about it. That's a tactic that I fundamentally disagree with. But what is he trying to do? What is he attempting to do? He seems to be attempting to stop the assault. And I'm glad to see that he is now sending somebody that appears to have some life experience that will be able to lay out the nuts and bolts, the butcher's bill of why you do not want to do what Israel seems hell-bent on doing. Normally on Peace Talks, we don't add in a what you can do section. Today we are. Thank you, Wicked Foxy Dragon, for giving us this link. This right here. I just put it in the chat. It's going to be in the VOD. If you want to know how you can personally affect this situation, how you can stop the violence in Gaza, how you can save Israeli lives, how you can save Palestinian lives, in other words, the lives of human beings. If you want to save human life, you can use the link that was just put in the chat, will be in the description of the VOD. And there are a number of ways you can simply voice your concern. A big part of the problem is that Congress is used to silence from the left. All we offer ever to Congress is our disapproval at the polls in their minds. That's changed in recent years, largely because of folks like you. Now is a time to give them plenty of heads up about how you feel. If you want peace in Gaza, just email Congress. You can click the link in the description. It will give you that opportunity. Email Congress. There's a literal link. Tell them, I don't want you to support a genocide. And that congressperson will suddenly realize they have a constituent who is okay with them being honest about what this will be. That will make a huge difference. You can sign a petition, also in the link presented, telling the U.S. government generally, this is how many people in your population were willing to sign a petition saying, please don't allow a ally, I suppose, of they are an ally, to allow an ally of ours to do a genocide. Much like in 2003, I wish our allies would not have enabled us to do something that hurt everybody. We have an opportunity here to be genuine friends to Israel and not let them get blood on their hands. Find a protest near you. I checked the link. It's an actual helpful list of upcoming protests and their locations. If you want to be out there physically showing the U.S. government, showing the whole world that there are U.S. citizens who want peace, not killing, peace. Find a protest near you, join the protest. You can phone bank if you're a masochist. You can phone bank and try to convince people to not support a genocide. You can share this on Twitter. There's a whole toolkit. There's a list of where your representatives' offices are. You can donate to Doctors Without Border or the PCRF. You have a ton of options, all in that link. Wicked Foxy Dragon, I cannot thank you enough for the link. And Wireless Mike, once again, thank you for the suggestion. We always love Bo of the Fifth Column.